Hello, this is Daniel, June the 7th, Sunday, June the 7th. Just sitting out on the front porch, enjoying the breeze. You can see it blowing through the trees this afternoon. It's been a beautiful day. Just resting and enjoying the debt-free, self-sustaining, organic, closed-loop homestead. And I thought I would just sit down. You know me, I've talked about it before, how I have so many lists of things going. I've got a prepper's list we may talk about, some gold and silver things we may talk about. Just going to sit back and talk about a few different things and just see how much information we can give out today that can help you. And hopefully you can comment in the comment section and add to the conversation and ask questions. I'll be glad to help you. I'm sitting here looking out and I can see the area that I weeded down there, and I thought maybe I'll start out with that. We weed eat all the way around the property. It can take me 2 days to weed eat everything, but it keeps the poison ivy and the snakes and all that type of thing down, and it's for me, it's nice to look at. I like it nice and tight and high. So on the weed eating, poison ivy is you're going to run into poison ivy out there on the farm. And this year it is especially bad poison ivy this year. But keeping it weed eated and keeping the free range chickens out here, they will pick up the baby snakes and eat them. So it really helps with the snake problem to keep it weed eated. Now, as far as the poison ivy, we've got this jewel soap. I don't know if you can see that. Poison ivy soap. It's called jewel soap. Jewelweed. Jewel weed soap. And ideally, put a little bit of jewel weed soap on. Wash your arms and your face before you go out. And randomly throughout the weed eating, every time I come in for gas or a break, I will wash up with the jewel weed soap. And even skin rash, people who have skin rashes and things like that, the jewel weed soap is amazing on the skin. So there's a little bit about the weed eating. And there's the Purple Martin house right there. And we put that up when we first moved in. And this year, 2020, is the first year we've actually had a Purple Martin build a nest in there, and they're really good for eating the mosquitoes around the farm. So I'll get that down this year, probably about, I think it's January, because the Purple Martins start looking for a home to put the nest in. I think it's February. Boy, I might need to be corrected on that. Someone let me know in the comments, when does the Purple Martin start to look for a home? And we'll probably put up some more now that we have one family living in there. Maybe we can get them to take over the farm around here. A little later on today, I'm going to work on pulling the last couple of rows of weeds. I told you about be sure to use thrash straw so that there's no seeds in the straw. I used unthrashed, and boy, have I paid the price on that. So I've got this list here, and it's about 100 items long of being a prepper, being prepared, just simple little things that you can do along and along. It doesn't have to be, oh, I don't have the money, I can't do it. When you buy something, you can have it in mind to last you a long time or to meet your needs during a crisis situation. One of the first things on my list is a generator, and I guess that's at the top of the list because I see it as the biggest mistake. People buy gasoline-powered generators. And the problem with those is the gasoline. Storing gasoline, it goes bad. You can add stabilizer, I know, gain a few extra months out of it. But for a complete shutdown that might last longer than 2 months or even last longer than 6 months, gasoline is going to be hard to get and difficult to store. Not only that, most of the time you have a power outage. Let's say the power goes out for bad weather, snow, thunderstorms, tree falls on the power lines, whatever, and you're out of power just for a day or two, and you get the generator out and you start it and you run it, and it, gives you power, and then power comes back on, you put the generator away, and the gasoline dries up in the carburetor and ruins the carburetor. It gets the carburetor all sticky, so next time you get the generator out, you've got to clean the carburetor. It's clogged up, and the gas has gone bad, and it's sticky. And so a propane generator, you can store the propane without any problem. 20, 30 years, store it for a long time. Plus, we use propane for everything else around the farm, whether it's the wood stove, the cook stove, various things, the gas grill, the smoker. We use it for the heater in the barn, in the chickens. When I'm working in the barn, I have a heater. So there's lots of propane tank uses around here. So, and you get more power. I won't go into the wattage and the amperage and all that. Just talking about overall power that you're going to get out of propane than you will gasoline. You're going to be able to run more appliances and things off of the propane generator than you can the gasoline generator. Run a freezer, refrigerator, those types of things, which have a huge surge draw. In other words, when they first kick on, they pull down a lot of power, and gasoline generators have a hard time meeting that draw that the compressor initially has when it starts up in a freezer and refrigerator. But a propane generator has enough strength in it to overcome the power surge that a freezer. Now, some people will buy solar ready freezers and refrigerators and that type of thing, but you can buy a standard refrigerator or freezer locally. I've seen them $5, $10, $25. Need maybe clean them out or whatever, and you can do that if you've got a generator that is propane powered, because then you can use a standard refrigerator, not one that's set up for solar, which is going to be very expensive. And if it goes bad, you're out of luck getting another one if your funds and availability and all that are shut down for a time, sort of like what we just had with this. Can't really say the word. Beep it out. Otherwise, YouTube will have a fit. So that's generators. That's just a little quick rundown of generators. And water. Water is the next, probably should be at the top of the list as far as priorities. It depends how you want to list them, but having fresh water is the main thing. You can survive a while without food, but not very long without water. We have several ways to catch water and purify water. You've probably seen the video of the filter under the back deck and the tanks that we have to catch the water. And we have a hand pump on top of the bored well that we can go out and pump that and get water right away. Something happened here a few years ago where the well pump went out, and the animals at that moment needed water at the same time. And thankfully I had that hand pump. I was able to pump some water them, and then work on the well, getting the old pump out and going to the hardware store, getting a new pump, getting the fittings back and forth, and all the problems that go along with that. Nothing's ever simple. It gets drug out, and the animals were not willing to wait whatever that was, 12 hours, 24 hours that it took for me to fix the well. So I strongly recommend a hand pump or some other type of quick freshwater situation for the animals when power outage or the pump goes out, or a fuse could go bad, whatever. When you're on a farm, you don't have neighbors. I don't have any neighbors I can go to their well and get water or anything like that. Now, we do have a guy that'll deliver water to us real quick if we need it, but he could be hours away, and that's an expense you don't want to have to deal with. There are Berkey water filters, and of course we have some of those in case things get really bad. You can dip them in the pond, and filter out the water. It's just simple charcoal and sand filter that they've molded and made into a drinking bottle. And you can build water purifiers, you layering charcoal and sand and gravel, and put it in a 5-gallon bucket and drop your water through that and purify water that way. There's lots of videos on that. So just wanted to say, number one, fresh water, if you're doing the list on priorities. Things like lighters and matches, you're going to need those to build a fire, to keep warm. The trick to the matches and lighters is the oxygen absorber. You need oxygen absorbers and maybe Mylar bags. You can put the lighters and the matches in the Mylar bag and put the oxygen absorber in there with them and seal them up, and they will last, I bet, forever. But if you just lay them in a drawer, up on a shelf or whatever, eventually the lighters go bad, and the matches, they absorb humidity and go bad. So if you're going to store matches, butane lighters, Bic lighter type things, get a Mylar bag, and they have food grade buckets. If you're going to store, maybe a gallon's worth of matches and lighters, get a 1-gallon food grade bucket and your Mylar bag, and put your oxygen absorber in there, and that's how you store your lighters and things. It's similar to storing food that you get if you want to store. We may talk about that later. Firewood, of course. Have ample extra firewood. We rotate our firewood out. You can see our firewood pile. It's right over there, and it has 3 sections. There's 1 section there, a 2 section, 3 section, and we just rotate it out. It should be full all the way through, but it's half and then 3/4 full. So we're actually thinking about moving that this year. But you want to rotate your firewood out. If you've got a 3-year supply, use what's oldest and save the newest stack stuff. Keep it dry. We just cover the top of it and leave the sides of it open so the wind can blow through. And of course, on the chainsaws, back before we bought this property, we had plenty of time to go to yard sales and auctions and things like that. And I just bought every chainsaw that I could find. If it was $10, $20, didn't run. If it ran or whatever, it didn't matter. And probably out of 13 or 15 chainsaws, I built 9. I have 9 really good chainsaws and plenty of parts. You've seen me organize things in the barn, and I've stacked and stored all the pieces and parts that were left over and got rid of the carcasses of the rest of the chainsaws. But I have plenty of chainsaws, from very small for branches to very big to cross-cutting saws and just all different types of blades. You need that to be on a farm. You don't know what you might end up with. And of course, we keep warm with firewood. We don't cook with firewood, but I wish I was that energetic to do that. But I use firewood to keep the fodder house warm in the winter, and firewood to keep the greenhouse warm in the winter. But mainly I use propane in the greenhouse because it is passive solar. In other words, the heat from the glass will keep it warm enough during the day. So I just run the propane heat in the greenhouse. One of the things about the greenhouse, you can almost see it from here. I'll turn around and point over there. You can see this is the fodder house right here, and this is the greenhouse. I don't know if you can see it, but in front of that fodder house, there's a white pipe sticking up right there out of the ground in front of the fodder house. Now that white pipe runs in under the ground, it's buried, and it comes up in the center of the fodder house. And there's one in the greenhouse and in the germinating house. And that's exactly where I set the propane cooker with a big pot of water on it, so that the propane is running and it's boiling, keeping the water warm, and it's giving humidity into the air. The black soldier flies love that. The fodder loves it. The germinating plants love the warm, misty air, so that's the ideally way to go. But I wanted to say about the pipe is the pipe brings in fresh oxygen. If you set the propane tank and the cooker up in there with your big tank of water, big kettle of water, the propane flame will drain the oxygen out of the greenhouse and it will extinguish it. It will go out because there's not enough oxygen. But that pipe allows oxygen to come in, and I've got it hooked to the wood stove. I use that as a damper to control the amount of air going into the wood stove for how cool and how hot I want the wood to cook. And after a few years of doing it, I know exactly what setting for what the temperature is going to be. If it's going to be 0 that night and wind blowing, I'll have the damper fully open. It's just a valve that's on that white pipe and allows the air in. But oxygen, fresh oxygen for your propane burner and your wood stove inside your greenhouse is, I found that to be very important the hard way. They, as far as cooking in wood stove, this is the 4th item on my list. Actually, that's the 4th item on my list is the wood stoves. So rocket stoves, we're going to do some videos on rocket stoves, but you can buy a rocket stove for about $300 from a camping type store that has a small generator on it, and you can charge your phone. And it only takes branches, little twigs, to get a roaring fire going to cook your meal. So it's easy to light, easy to run, do your meal, and you can put it away. It just takes little branches. It doesn't have to be chainsaw, a wood splitter, stacking the wood, getting hot coals going from the wood and all of that. It can just be little tiny branches fed into a rocket stove that will also give you power. At the same time, while you're cooking your meal, you can be charging your phone. I think I paid about $300 for my little rocket stove, but well worth the money. We'll do a video on those. I'll get that thing out and we'll do a little video on that. I don't know if you saw that purple martin that just landed on the birdhouse. I thought that the babies would have flown away by now, but she is still feeding them. Manual laundry, washing, some way to, it could be just a plunger type laundry. I've seen those buckets, you've seen them before. They're bright yellow buckets at restaurants that they use to roll around and they squeeze the mop out and mop the floor at restaurants. I've seen those used to wash clothes. You can, put your soap in the bottom and plunge your clothes in the bucket part and then squeeze them out with the handle that normally would squeeze out the mop handle, and then hang them up. So you can pick up those mop buckets. I've seen them cheap on Craigslist and Marketplace, or just pick yourself up a new one. That way you've got that bucket with a plunger, a laundry plunger. We may do a link once we get our Amazon store up and running. We'll do a link to a plunger. But if you've got that bucket and the plunger, and you can use the mop wringer to wring out your clothes and then give them a rinse and then hang them and wring them out again, well, that'd be ideal. The way to go. Well, that's the first 4 or 5 items on my my little prepper list. It's 100 items long, and a good friend of mine helped me put that together. We robbed the original list off of the internet. It was pretty complete, and we just refined it a little bit, added our notes and stuff. But there's the first 4 items, and there's, like I said, there's 100 more. So we'll be working on that. But I want to talk about silver and gold. Silver and gold. We're printing money like it's going out of style, and handing it out like it's candy. And this has been tried many times throughout history We have historical records, all the way back to the Aztec. They manipulated their currency. They were the first people to do that. Then the Romans. Look at the Romans. They had the $5 gold coin, and their economy was doing very well, and the leaders that came into power came up with the idea to bring in the $5 gold coin and mix it half bronze, half gold, and send it back out again. And that meant that the government now had twice as much gold as the people did. And so they were able to build an army and conquer other lands and do, free health care, free cash for clunkers, free cell phones, unemployment money handed out, able to bail out states, bail out corporations, bail out banks. They were able to do those things. And going back to the Roman story, well, they built the Colosseum. I like to look at the Colosseum and consider that their entertainment, like we have TV and all other forms of entertainment. And they had the aqueducts, where they were bringing water and moving water around and growing massive gardens. And I look at how plentiful food is for us now. You can go to a buffet and sit down and have Alaskan king crab and Hawaiian grown pineapple, and you can have something from the Midwest, all these different foods from all over the world at a buffet. And here the Romans had the same thing. They had plentiful food, plentiful entertainment, but they kept halving the gold coin. They'd call it back in again, and they would half it again, and then they quartered it. Then they, 1/10, and then finally it was just an all bronze coin, and the value of it had completely diminished to the point eventually where nobody took it, and so Rome fell. And so we have that throughout history. Whether you look at the South during the Civil War, they printed money like crazy. If you find an old Confederate note, you can see how they quit printing on the back because they just printed on the front, and then they were cut by hand, and you can see how they were so quickly cut and separated off of the sheet. And 50s and 100s were very popular. Nowadays, a $50 Confederate note or a $100 Confederate note is not really worth very much. But now a $1 note from the beginning of the war, 1861, is worth way more than a $100 note in 1864 when the war was over. So I hope I said that right. 1861, a $1 bill would be worth way more than a $100 bill in 1864, near the end of the war. So, and of course, you've got Weimar Republic. Germany is a fine example where Hitler printed money, and he went into Austria and Hungary and all these other countries, and he was able to take them over with free health care, free social programs, and he passed out money like it was candy, and the people were willing to basically sell their soul. And when countries refused, he just built up his army with printing money. And then, of course, eventually, I've seen pictures of little kids burning bundles of German marks because it just has BTU value. In other words, how much heat does it generate when it's burning is the only value that paper money has. And now we've strayed to just digital money, where we just add a zero in the computer and instantly the government is able to pay its bills. I may have gotten off track a little bit, but I wanted to tell a little story that I think about. I watch a lot of YouTube videos on currency. Obviously, we have a gold and silver coin business. And if anybody has any questions about gold and silver as a hedge, what we're doing, we're not going to give out financial advice, but we're just going to tell you what we're doing. And the gold and silver, a lot of people don't understand. I watched Mike Maloney and Jim Rickards and Lynette Zhang, and there's a bunch of them. You watch those three, you're going to get connected with a bunch of YouTube videos on currency and gold and silver. But a lot of people don't seem to make it clear why gold and silver. It's not just a historic store of value. The reason gold and silver are currency is because it stores energy and time and effort. So if one guy goes out and digs silver out of the ground all week long, and another guy goes out here and pans gold on the side of the river, you're going to have a yield of effort, a certain amount of gold for that week and a certain amount of silver. Well, that's called the ratio. The amount of energy that goes in yields a certain ratio of gold and silver. Historically, that ratio is about 15 to 1. That's the historic ratio. That's what the currency was originally established at back in the early 1900s, well, actually 1800s, early 1800s. It's been 15 to 1. And that's the way it was all the way up until Roosevelt took us off of the gold standard. But so we have this ratio. And the historic ratio is 15 to 1. The natural ratio, in other words, today, if two guys go out, one pans it on the side of the river, one digs it out of the ground, today's ratio is a little less than 10 to 1. But the paper ratio, in other words, what it's traded for on the COMEX, on the stock market, paper trading, no actual silver or gold exchanges hands, but the ratio is, it has been recently as high as 130 to 1. So if we simply correct back to the natural ratio, today's ratio of 10 to 1, if gold is $1,700 an ounce, then silver should be $170 an ounce. So we need to see that silver is extremely undervalued, and we can see that the market is extremely overvalued right now because of the inflated paper. You've got 40 million people out of work, but the market is about to hit an all-time high. It's at 27,000. I think 29.5 was the high. So we're less than 10% away from hitting an all-time high. So the golden rule: sell what's high, buy what's low. That's the way we look at it. It's not financial advice. I'm just telling you how I look at it. If the market is breaking all-time highs at a pace that's never been seen before, and money's being printed, and silver's at a ratio of 130 to 1, silver's the cheapest thing. So you buy the silver. So that's what my wife and I did. We looked at this back when the housing crisis happened. We bought a bunch of silver, and it started to climb. And it got up to almost $50 an ounce. And property was extremely cheap. They were auctioning it off. Foreclosed property, super cheap. Being auctioned off. And silver was up. So I said, okay, sell what's high, buy what's low. We sold the silver, and we were able to buy property and pay cash. We bought this, it's almost 8 acres. With a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on it. And we're centrally located. I can be in Washington, D.C. in an hour, and I can be in Richmond in an hour. So there's plenty to do, not to mention what's 10 minutes, 20 minutes away from us. And we bought this for $30,000. 8 acres, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, auctioned off at foreclosure. It had a driveway, it had a well, it had the septic, had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Now the house needed major repairs. But when you can be living debt-free in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you'll do what you have to. So we bought a camper. We moved on to the property. Of course, there was no water, no septic or anything working at the time when we moved on here. But I just went to work on it around here, and we've been here 5 or 6 years, something like that. And so as you're walking around with us, as you're watching the videos here in 2020, just keep in mind, I've worked day and night around here. We didn't just sit on the front porch and kick up. We were working. We were working to build the fences, working to clear the property, get the well up and running, get the septic up and running, and put the porches on. All these things that we did, it was time, money, effort, but we were in it completely free and clear. And the point is, sell high, buy low. It's what we did. You know, it's not financial advice. I'm just telling you what we did. We bought silver when it was really low. We sold it when it was really high. We bought what was really low. The property was really low, being auctioned off. We had cash. We were able to step up and buy it. And right now, silver is extremely low, and the market is extremely high. Well, I've really covered a lot of various items, been all over the place. Still got my list, my paper list laying here of things I need to do. You know, that list keeps me going. It's my Monday list, it's my week list, what I want to accomplish, and it's my list for the next year, this fall, next spring, and it even has my 5-year goals on it, but they change a lot. But I want to thank everybody. Bless you. Have a great evening, and please like, share, comment. Let me know how I can help you just by asking questions. And I'm no expert, so I appreciate any advice you can give. Thank you.